Hi, my name is Grayson, and I interviewed my mom, and her name is Melanie. I am a Generation Z, and she is a Generation X, and there's a 35-year difference between us. So, the biggest difference I would say that there is between our generations is the technological advancements. I grew up with iPads, smartphones, constant access to the internet and TV, and they didn't. My mom said in her interview that they always kind of had to make up their own form of entertainment for themselves, I guess. Um, and so this also ties into like the cultural influences and differences we have. My generation has been influenced by global connectivity through social media and all the apps like Snapchat or TikTok and everything. So we're a lot more knowledgeable, I would say, about those kind of diverse cultural experiences, as to Generation X would be a lot more naive to those kinds of things just because they weren't exposed to them like we were. My mom has said that religion has probably had the biggest influence on her worldview. It was one of the biggest parts of their day-to-day life growing up, just because it was expected of them. And I can relate to that in a way. Being the way my mom grew up, I think that's kind of how she wanted me to grow up as well. So I've been very active in the church since I was a kid and have continued that on now. And I can definitely say how it's shaped my worldview, beliefs, and values, honestly. I can also relate to her statement of her household was very traditional growing up. The women would do the women jobs of cooking, cleaning, etc., and the men would do the men jobs of like the outside and more hard like labor work. I wouldn't say that's exactly how I grew up, but I think my mom definitely carried that over into my family as well. And it's definitely still pretty traditional, but not as much as she grew up. Like when I was growing up, I would still be asked to do the dishes and do most of the cleaning, but my dad would have me go outside and stain the wood for the deck, and my brother would do a majority of the same thing. Still pretty traditional, just not to the extent of her generation. This has shaped how I think about the relationships between men and women and how they're expected to honestly treat each other. The last one that I could say I can relate to is my mom said she just wasn't very exposed to conflict growing up because her parents were very good at like hiding when they were fighting, which is a good thing when you're growing up with little kids, but it can also not benefit you in a way where you don't know how to respond to any conflict. So my mom said that has shaped her worldview a little bit, because after your teenage years and you get into adulthood, then you're exposed to more relationship conflict, and then you just don't know how to deal with it. I can relate to this because I think that my mom has kind of carried that over into my family as well, and whenever there is conflict in our family, the tension just gets really high, and I don't think anyone really knows how to respond to it in a healthy way. This is something our family definitely recognizes and would like to change it and is working on that, but it has personally shaped the way I deal with things in my relationships as well. Now, some of the differences. The first one would have to be doing with that religion just isn't really expected anymore. She said that in their household and growing up, it was very expected for just all the families and everyone in town to be at church every Sunday and be involved in all the youth group things. It was basically what they did all the time. And I would say that's not really the case for me. If anything, well, when I was a kid, it was expected of me, and my parents made me do it and like go to church and be involved and stuff. But now for me, it's more of a personal choice. So that was one of the biggest differences. And if anything, it is less normal to be Christian and go to church now than it is back then. It's less normal for everyone else. Another difference would be how they had to make their own entertainment with their siblings growing up. That's one of the biggest things she said in her interview. They always just had to go find something to do. They'd go make stick swords out of sticks in their backyard and hang out with their siblings all day outside, or their parents would give them chores to do. And I can relate to the chores part, but I can't relate to the fact that I didn't constantly have entertainment right in front of my face my entirety of growing up. And lastly, a major difference is that she didn't really face any like gender roles or stereotypes when choosing her career field. Me personally, that definitely helped me decide. Even though nursing is like mostly a women-dominated field, if it was a men-dominated field, I don't think that I would have chosen it the way I did. And it's women-dominated for a reason, because women tend to want to have more of a relationship-like job. Anyways, so yeah, that's another big difference. She didn't really face any gender stereotypes or roles choosing her career field, but that is definitely something I have thought about and evaluated when choosing my career field. She said the main thing that changed her worldview was the divorce that she went through really early on. It changed her worldview on family life, marriage, and then what kids would look like for her in the future. Another one that changed her kind of worldview on things was when her camp that she counseled at and camped at, it was called Byron Bible Camp, it got flooded, like terribly flooded, in a spring flood after the snow melted, and she was in her early 20s, I guess, and any of you who have been to any kind of camp, it's kind of like your home in a way, and so she said that really just shaped her worldview on reality, and it kind of hit her pretty hard. So the first question where I would say I learned the most is the question when I asked, when you consider working with diverse generations in your career, what values, beliefs, or social norms cause the most conflict? She says that the younger generations in the workforce can come off as quite disrespectful sometimes because they talk to their elders in a more personal and less professional manner in the workplace. And she says that comes off pretty disrespectful to the elders. And so that's something I just keep in the back of my mind when talking to older professionals, because I don't want to come off as disrespectful. The second one would be her gender roles in her household. It was always very traditional with the boys' jobs and girls' jobs, and sometimes I think that's how I would like to raise my kids, just in the sense of traditionality, I guess. And that's something I learned from her. Lastly, I've learned a lot from the question, how did divorce change your family life and your social identity? That's a question I asked her. Before she got divorced, she thought that divorce was terrible. It was never going to happen for her, and that God hated it because it wasn't something that was very common back then. So once she did get divorced, she had to relearn her kind of mentalities on those things and how to do everything on her own. And so yeah, what she told me helped me with, I think will help me with a lot of lessons later in my future. So overall, this discussion really helped me understand the major differences in our generations, and how we grew up, the good and the bad. And the major takeaway that I will remember from this interview is simply how good I have it, and I wouldn't have wanted to grow up any other way. Thank you.